The meeting of the Amherst Finance Committee will come to order at 6:11 on April 30th. Welcome. These are all articles that we're going to be dealing with tonight, so we're going to just review a few. Article 2, transfer of funds, unpaid bills.
All right, you voted to recommend this article back in April, but we are, well, it's still April, early April, but we are going to dismiss this. So I don't know if you need to re-vote it for a recommendation for dismissal or just go with what you have.
Why don't we recommend to dismiss?
So
Do I hear a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. 6.
Which article we?
The Article
Article
2, the transfer of funds, we're going to dismiss.
I assume that's because there are no unpaid bills, right?
Right.
By a vote of what? It's unanimous?
6-0,
one
one
absent.
absent.
Six.
Okay. Article 4, which is the budget amendments.
Right. So the motion is to move $125,000 from community services budget, functional area, to general government to help offset the health claims trust fund deficit. So we didn't know how much we were moving and from where, so we hadn't voted it yet. So there's ample savings in community services. There's quite a bit of savings from veteran services. We haven't had to pay out as many benefits this year as we have in the past. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I would assume it's a good thing. That means less people are in need.
So we're moving it from CS to GG?
We are.
What's CS?
Community services.
Services.
There's also savings in the health department there because the health director voluntarily reduced her hours to 30 hours a week. And there's savings in leisure services in Cherry Hill because of the reorganization of the department. Now, the only budget, this is just moving fiscal year 18 budget. It's not going to affect the budget for 19 except for leisure services because that's a reorganization. So that did go down and will stay down.
So,
Okay, so basically, the first A is to move $125,000 from community services to general government. And then B is to dismiss.
Yes.
And C, which is free cash, to appropriate $2 million.
$2 million.
From, that's all in here.
Right, it's all in the motions.
Do I have to read that whole motion?
I wouldn't. That's totally up to you, Mary.
What's RFP again?
Reserve
This
fund transfer.
this will probably then be voted by A, B, and C, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, do I hear a motion for A to move the $125,000 from community services to general government?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
yes, since I wrote the community services budget for fiscal 19, is there anything that might mean we're going to maintain the fiscal 19 budget as
Correct.
is? And
This is just
why
savings in
then
18.
wouldn't we just think it might be reduced by 125, just continuing on? Is there any, is this supposed to be a 1 year?
It's savings that we realized in this year.
I know, but why wouldn't they be savings again next year is I guess my question.
Well, the health department, the hours have been cut to 30 hours. That's already reflected.
But that
in
was
this-
reflected in
in
fiscal.
year 19 already.
Right,
It's already been
right.
adjusted for that. The veterans benefits, we don't want to reduce those permanently.
Okay.
So we're not going to reduce that.
Because the community services budget for fiscal 19 was less than fiscal 18, so we've already taken care of some of that. And you're just making, got it. Okay.
Okay.
HCTF, what's that stand for?
Health claims trust.
Thank you.
Okay, further comments on A? Okay, all in favor of moving the $125,000, please say aye, or raise your hand. Easy to see. Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. 601 abstaining.
By the way, Article 4 is in the consent calendar, what we just did.
Well, somebody might separate it out.
Oh,
So we do want to have recommendations on that.
Is that, you can say that?
Yeah.
So is that B, 601?
It's 4A.
Okay.
Oh, but it just says removed from consent calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait,
I think it's been.
Oh,
I don't
this
have
is, I'm
red
just
ones.
looking at the
It was
consent
on the
calendar.
consent calendar.
Oh.
But it was moved.
And the new motion is to remove
I
it?
think
Go
yes.
with the new script.
Oh,
and
okay,
everything.
okay,
Right,
got it.
okay.
I'm just as confused by these scripts and then the
Okay.
policies and everything.
B is to recommend dismissal.
Yes, we were going to increase the reserve fund transfer for fiscal year 18 because of the deficit, and we didn't know we were going to realize savings in places like snow and ice, but we think we're going to be able to cover the snow and ice within the existing $100,000. So we're okay dismissing that.
Okay, sounds good.
However, since you brought
Okay.
this up, the town manager is reconsidering the fiscal year 19 reserve fund transfer. They may decide to increase that using free cash. I mean, that'll come up in that big room. We're not for sure if they're doing it yet. But there was thought it would be frugal to increase the reserve fund transfer for fiscal year 19, just in case something came up before the charter came in place. So I'm not
Okay.
sure if they're doing it. They were discussing it when I left work at 4:30, so.
Okay,
But this is for FY 18.
This one's for fiscal year
right,
18.
right. So do I hear any other comments on dismissal of B? Okay, all in favor of dismissing, please raise your hands.
Do we need a motion?
Oh, do a motion to dismiss.
I so move.
There's a second? Okay, all in favor? Okay, it looks like 6, or no, 7.
Wait, where did he go? Oh, there.
Okay, 700. Okay,
And then Part C is to appropriate free cash into the health claims trust fund. This is to prevent us having a deficit at year end. Right now, we're looking at about $800,000 deficit, but we still have to pay the run out of the claims that incurred during June. So claims will be incurred right up to June 30th, which won't get billed until July, so we'll have to bill those. This is just a loan from free cash. It's going to get paid back through surcharge or additional premium that we're going to be instituting as of July 1. So once that surcharge, that premium that we're collecting for this reaches the $2 million, it will be transferred back to the general fund revenue and it will fall to free cash. We've done this like 11 years ago when we had the last health claims trust fund deficit. So in the motion, it does say via surcharge.
okay, in the motion, I have a blank under general government account by, which you handed it out today, and I have no idea what
Where do you
dollar
see the
amount
blank?
goes in. Under mine,
Page 2.
page 2,
Page 2.
and it
Under
says
Article
the
4.
motion by, and then it's the third line down.
Oh, no, that's,
Yours is a draft.
Page 7.
Oh, mine is a draft.
no, this
Page
is,
7.
this was what Sonia just gave us. Is this a draft?
No.
No. Page 7 is
Just
what we're
what?
talking
Oh,
What?
about.
that's
I didn't-
different. This is different.
I didn't get mine.
Yeah, you just
Yeah, that's
asked why.
moved on page 7.
No, hers is different. Look.
Yes, it is.
You did grab it, it's right
Oh.
there.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's why it's different.
Got the date on.
Goodness.
Oh, okay. Oh, boy.
What?
Yeah, right.
So what page is it on?
7.
Seven.
Okay.
It's in the motion, buried in the motion.
Okay. That's good.
So this is like an omnibus motion for the 125,000 and the 2 million. This is all going into health.
I would suggest that since this is a kind of complicated proposal, a motion, that somebody, either you or Paul or somebody, explain this 2 million, because people think we have free cash and we can spend it on other things, and now we're using free cash to be used. So that needs to be a really clear explanation that we're not just using free cash and it's going to be gone.
Right,
And it's
So-
just, it's a loan.
Who,
right.
yeah, but who's going to, from finance group, not myself,
Who's got this article?
this me, I do.
Okay.
But I do expect that a clearer explanation will come either from you or Paul.
Oh, yes, Paul's been working on it.
Okay, no, seriously, I don't want to, bungle through that, because it's really important,
Mhm.
but it's important for them to know it's a loan and it's going to go back to free cash.
Yeah.
Or as we get farther into the articles, I've certainly heard that, chatter where people are going to add money to this budget, to the 19 budget.
I agree. I originally wrote this motion in 3 parts, where it was A, B, and C, and they combined them all, and there's a little bit of frustration on my part that they're all combined.
Who's they?
The motion writing people, approving people,
I don't know who that
And we
is.
should also know
town council, and
how much total is in free cash.
Yeah.
It's 2 million out of X, and I forget what X is, so we should.
I have all that.
I'm sure you do, but just in
And
case someone
how
asks.
long does it take for it to go back, to be acquired back? or
It'll
charged back?
probably take, we're hoping it's just 1 year, it might go into 2. It depends, it all depends on enrollment at the time, because we're collecting surcharges for people that are enrolled in health insurance. Because it's really a premium increase. We're calling it a surcharge and keeping it separate, because now we're going to fully insured. So we're going to be paying Maya for our Blue Cross fully insured policy, but we're going to be collecting this, and it's going into the health claims. So we're still self-insured for the for the fiscal year 18 claims.
I got
So it's
you.
like 2 separate premiums. So in order to keep it separate, instead of just increasing premiums,
Okay.
Right, I get it, I
we're
get it.
going into surcharge.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
Okay. Then,
I will track it carefully and make sure it gets back as soon as possible.
so Article 4 is going to be one motion unless people choose to divide it. Okay. That may happen.
Yeah, I think it's the moderator that combined it all as one motion.
Okay. All in favor of, well, there's parts of it. All in favor, we did the A. Now we did B, now all in favor of C.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, we do.
So moved.
The second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. 7-0-0. Okay, now
What was
we're,
part A? What was the vote? Was that?
that was 6-0-1
Okay.
abstaining.
That's what I thought.
Okay, then we're down to,
13? Right?
right, capital equipment.
Now, we had already voted capital equipment, but if you remember, we were still $400,000 short for our overall budget to balance for revenues sources for all the expenditures for the entire town budget. And the contingency plan was to wait and see what the House Ways and Means brought in for a budget. And it did increase a little bit, but not enough. And the contingency was we would reduce our capital spending back to 8.5% in order to balance the budget if we didn't get enough from state aid. And town manager felt really strongly he wanted to keep that spending at 9% of the levy. He thinks putting the money into roads is really important, and covering our capital is really important. So we decided to reduce the taxation to support Article 13 by $300,000, and then add overlay surplus. We had an overlay surplus balance of over $329,000. So we decided to use that as the funding source to make up that $300,000. So we're keeping our spending at 9%. We're just changing our funding source.
And the funding source, that 300,000 is coming from where?
Overlay surplus.
Over the surplus.
We have to vote overlay 1% of the tax levy every year. It's part of the budget that we build for abatements and exemptions that
Okay.
people file. So we're done filing abatements and exemptions, and we kept enough to cover what's still outstanding. So the
Okay. balance
was released by the Board of Assessors.
Okay.
This goes back over several fiscal years.
Right.
So it's built up?
Yep.
Okay, super.
Okay, this is going to be burnt, yes, Janice?
I see ambulance fund in this.
Yeah, ambulance was there.
Yes, so, I read about Hadley dropping our ambulance service, so our revenues from ambulance will go down.
Yeah, the Hadley situation will affect us for fiscal year 2020.
Oh, we're not 19.
Not for 19, that's already in place, and we have to have money in our receipts reserve for ambulance the year we're voting it, so the money's already there for 2019. So it's what we'll be collecting in 2019 for 2020 that will be affected by the Hadley vote.
Okay, do I hear a motion for this article?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, any further questions? Are all in favor? Okay, 700. Budget to recommend.
And I think that's all the only ones, right? 25 and 26, we don't know if we're going to be using them yet, so it's hard to go there.
Oh, we have 37
On the agenda.
I did that, I put that there only because I think they're going to move to dismiss that, right?
Right.
Which one?
Is
37.
Is
The
it,
bylaw?
That's the noise. That's the one the
Noise
attorney
bylaw.
recommended
Right.
that we take no action on, or just do a recommended.
I thought it was 34 as well.
Or was.
Yeah,
it what?
34 as
And
well as 37. Those two articles are, Attorney Bard flagged those two articles as being outside the bounds set up by the charter.
Right. Well, the other one on the select, Alyssa talked about that at Cocker Farm, and the noise, there's just far more to that noise bylaw.
Mhm.
There's a lot of law around shooting ranges. And the other thing is that the police, we didn't know that, but the Amherst Police and UMass Police use that range. And they use it all year long, day and night. Not every day, every night, but it is something they use. So we didn't know that, and that would have been kind of a monetary thing possibly. So
Again,
it's just,
council said that it's likely that the shooting range would be grandfathered in anyway. So even if the bylaw passed, it wouldn't affect that particular range as long as it stayed in existence. So, and then again, 34 was deemed that, what council said, if I've got it right, is that town meeting could vote on 34 and 37 if it wanted, but those would be advisory, not binding.
okay, so anyway, those are going to be dismissed. And I think on both of them, I'm not sure. We really didn't take a position, so we're okay on that. All right, then,
Actually, the what is it called? The script for Article 34 does not say dismiss. It says recommend referral to the planning board.
to the,
Planning board.
well, which one?
Oh, no, that's,
34.
yeah, it's Keener.
We didn't recommend to the planning board, we didn't do anything.
No, I know, we were just talking, the two of them. The script recommends dismissal of 37 and referral to planning board for 34. Those are the two that the attorney said don't town meeting make a decision. So, but it's immaterial for us.
Oh, we
because
didn't reach
weren't taking a
consensus,
position
we
anyway.
didn't do anything.
Right.
The select board said refer to the planning board,
Right.
yeah. Okay. News affecting the budget.
I think I covered that, right?
Okay, that's it. Other than later for the fire department, later, okay. Then we're going to finish early. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are Janet's?
I do have a committee liaison for audit committee.
You have what?
A committee
Item number
liaison?
7.
Oh, sure. Great.
For OPEB, there was an audit committee meeting and we had a long discussion about the OPEB.
Okay,
And there was some interchange on email that I forwarded to you, which you then forwarded to the rest of the committee, a response from the auditor. So there was some question about computing the OPEB liabilities. There have been some changes in the state law in terms of how they want those things accounted for.
okay,
So the estimates are now varying a little bit, although it's not clear what the variance really is, because we don't know the details about which assumption changes impact the total amount in what way. I mean, that detail is still not available.
Right.
We've asked them for it. But I think the scale of the liability won't really be affected that much, I don't think.
okay.
So
But
if
still
we-
great? It's still a lot.
It's still a lot. It's would be anywhere between $50 to $100 million, depending on the assumptions.
Right.
And so we do so this is what if somebody removes OPEB from the consent calendar, this is what we will have the discussion in the town meeting. What I'm just saying, the liability is still quite substantial. And the biggest driver in the liability is the healthcare cost. And the healthcare costs have recently spiked. So the prognosis is that it's going to be, it's going to remain substantial. There's the likelihood of it. The further thing that's happening is that there's something called Rule 75, which requires that the liability now be shown on the town's balance sheet, which previously it was sort of invisible from there. It was not showing up in the books, and now it'll be visible in the balance sheet itself. So that was the extent. Did I say it right?
Yep, the full
Sally?
liability, yeah, because we were only booking the accrued liability. Now we have to put the entire amount on the balance sheet.
Doesn't change anything, doesn't change the cash flows, doesn't change your policy. It's just that doesn't even change your liability. It's just that previously we knew what the liability was, but it was not fully reflected in the books. Now that same liability which has not changed, but now it is showing up in the books. So it's going to stare us in the face every time we see it.
Okay. There was at Crocker Farm Precinct meeting, or neighborhood, whatever we call it, meeting, that was brought up. That liability still is on people's mind. Now, whether anyone, they're talking about, well, maybe we should add more money to it. We weren't doing quite enough.
But we're doing $500,000 this year.
Right, but they said compared to what we owe. Whether anyone will bring it up, I don't know, but that was part of the chatter for one area anyway.
Well, it's probably the biggest liability the town, one of the big, if not the biggest, one of the biggest liabilities the town has.
Right.
So I think it's worth having some discussion. I think I actually oppose it being on the consent calendar because it is one of the biggest liabilities, and this is just kind of swept through in the consent calendar, which is not really a right thing to do, in my view.
It may be taken off, so.
Yeah, it's been on the consent calendar every year. Someone
That's
always
right.
pulls it out.
Yeah. So I hope previously John Fox had wanted it to come off the consent calendar. I hope he's here today.
And we did go out to bid and we did hire the actuary, the same actuary we had. He came in the best price. And they'll be doing a new actuary for the end of this fiscal year. So that with the new rules, try to work with him to keep it consistent from year to year, what the discount rates are going to be, or at least have decent guidelines so we can kind of pin down really what the liability is. Is it 100 million? Is it 50 million? Is it somewhere in between? That's the confusion. That's the confusion I have.
Well, the email that you sent around, or somebody sent around, was that the one where it was between 7.5,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so. is that part-
775 versus 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And that's part of what we're waiting
Well,
on the state
we were required to use 4% discount rate because we were partially funding. We weren't fully funding the ARC, the annual required contribution. we're partially funding it because we have the pay-as-you-go amount, plus we've been putting in, you know, this year will be 500, last year was this year was 400, next year is 500, and it was 300. Where town manager's plan is to stop at 500 and put 500 in every year until we see what monies might come available in the budget to add more for future years, but.
So what's the question about the 7?
Well, so the way they estimate the liabilities is that when they expect payouts to be to the people who are retired and stuff like that, so they take all those cash flows and then discount the future cash flows to today's dollars, right? That's what they do. So the discount rate they use to bring the future cash flows into the present has an influence on what the amount is, the present.
And that's
So that's
the
the confusion. Now what happens is there's an inverse relationship. Think of a seesaw. So as the discount rate goes down, the estimated liability goes up. As the discount rate goes up, the estimated liability goes down, right? So at 7.75, which they've increased the discount rate slightly in the state rules, so the lower bound of the range is slightly lower. But the upper bound, which if you continue using 4%, the upper bound remains about the same, which is about $103 million. So the range of the total liability of the town is somewhere between $50 to $100 million, and that's about the as close we can get to the range. But whichever way you think about it, it's a good deal of dough.
Thank you.
So.
That was helpful.
So they use a 4% discount rate?
And a 7.25.
To get the upper
Well,
and lower range.
for us,
Okay, so
we
you're
should be
doing
using 4% because we are only partially funding it,
Okay.
right? If we were fully funding it, but to fully fund it, we would have put like a lot more money than $500,000, like $2 to $4 million. I don't know what the amount is really.
Yeah, I think it's
So we are putting only $500,000 a year.
Right.
So which means that discount rate we should be using is 4%.
Right.
If you use the discount rate of 4%, then the estimated liability is about over $100 million.
Gotcha.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Most towns are in this situation.
Yes.
There's only one that's paid up, isn't there?
Well, I'm not really sure, but you know, if everybody's going broke, doesn't mean that we should be going broke.
Oh, no,
too.
I'm not even suggesting that, but I think it's
think the only
good
town
to
that's
know
paid up
that
is
we're
New
not.
Salem.
Well, sometimes people make the argument that we're not alone in this. And I think that's sort of an unhelpful argument, that we're not alone in this, because the fact of the matter is still pocket money from our pockets.
Right.
Yeah.
And the enterprise funds are contributing their full annual required contribution.
They are.
So that kind of throws it off too,
Yeah.
because it's partially fully funded.
But we should remember also that this amount of $100 million does not include the school OPEB liabilities. The schools have a OPEB liability too, to which ultimately the property owners in the town are responsible.
You mean just
The
the
regional
region?
The regional,
The
right.
elementary
So
is not.
the liability for, not for the town, but for the people who are living in this town, for them, the liability is to the order of $150 million.
150?
Yeah. So we are talking about some real money here.
Yeah, it took a long time to get the regional school committee to accept the fact they had to start a fund. Because they had people who didn't, pretty much, everybody else is in this, so, why bother?
Well, I think one of the things to the town's credit, the town is on it. The town staff understand this, Paul and
Right.
Sonia can understand this is a
Right.
important liability. So to me, it seems like what is happening is some of it is showing up as, move towards higher premiums, more aggressive controlling of the healthcare costs. So, that's what the town is trying to do to contain that.
And then some of that is in negotiations too. We were at the
Right.
four-town meeting, people were suggesting that we take a look at how we negotiate now as new people come on. Obviously, we've made commitments to people who are already employed. So it's a lot to look at.
So Sonia,
moving
could you confirm that the town is doing those things, like, raising premiums and, is that going on, or is it my
Oh,
imagination?
yes, we raised the premiums between 25 and 30% in fiscal year 18. That's why we have the deficit
For the
in
retirees,
their appropriation for all across the board,
including the retirees.
including the retirees.
So that, is that in part to control the OPEB costs?
No, that was because we were self-insured and our fund is in deficit. We didn't have enough money to pay claims.
So that amount is not going towards, that's not going to impact OPEB. It's just to get rid of the deficit.
It will, higher premiums will impact OPEB.
Okay, but we don't know.
We don't know what the impact is yet, but we will with this new
Okay.
actuary coming in.
I have an additional question. So the regional school has $150 million, it's separate for OPEB. Where is that reflected?
It's in their own budget.
That's in their own budget as well?
Yes.
And is that a new requirement also that's shown up in their budget?
Yes.
Region, yes.
Okay.
Region.
The Rule 74 and 75 are for OPEB.
Okay.
These are gas government accounting standard board rules.
And Paul mentioned something about combining, like we have Harvard and.
We combined to one insurance.
You did, we did.
Company we accepted a bid through Maya, which is
Okay.
Massachusetts Insurance, don't even ask me what it is. But they,
MIA?
they're,
Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association.
thank you.
Okay,
And they work with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
okay.
So we have one carrier through Blue Cross Blue Shield for fiscal year 19. Our rates are actually going down a little from our last increase, a few dollars here and there. So the rates will go down a little. So we're not going to have a health insurance increase for 2019. And we won't have to have premium increases in the middle of the year because Maya is, even though they're self-insured, they work for municipalities and they have like $500 million in
Oh, wow.
fund, and
Okay.
so they can smooth that out for us. Where
Right.
The
we
risk
have to-
liability for claims
Much-
reverts to the insurance company and
Right.
not the fund.
Right, so we
we don't
contract
have
for
the
a
risk
year.
anymore.
We
Right, so
contract for a
not the
year.
health claims trust.
Right,
Right.
Yeah, okay.
right.
Well, that's good.
We couldn't predict with our crystal ball that people were getting sick and
Yeah, good, yeah, I know, it's definitely a growing.
And we have really good policy. We had a really robust policy for very little money, and that drew in a lot of people to our coverage,
Oh, right, yeah. So we were-
spouses, they chose our policy rather than their spouses because it was much better.
Yeah, so that was
So
more taxing on.
So we're fully insured, there's a deductible now, where there never was a deductible, there's co-pays, there's quite a few changes that came in to
Good to
play.
know.
Any other questions on OPEB? Okay. The fire. and-
Yeah, fire, so we did meet,
Did
yeah.
you meet?
Yeah, But this could be like the last, this could be the last meeting, everybody. They were just like, it's just not going anywhere. So we heard from Castle Booze, who was the architect for the fire station. So they gave a presentation, and I'll email you guys out. I have a whole packet of the presentation of what it was about, Castle Booze. But again, the problem really remains that no one has a home, nobody has a home for anything. And so they're kind of looking at the same sites, which is the DPW site, but then we don't have a home for the DPW. They also have a site sort of across the street for the fire station, but that's got all bunch of issues. They're still looking at that site up by what Mission Cantina is. It's kind of across the street. There's like that open field, there's a little office building there. It's a little office, and they're kind of looking at that. But again, they kind of gave this presentation, but it's all just kind of up in the air. And then the second half of the meeting was really about this net zero energy. And they're kind of changing, they want to sort of change the bylaw, which we're going to hear about in this meeting one of these nights, to raise it from $1 million to $2 million. And some other things, but they're already getting pushback on that from the public. But that's also something that needs to be addressed, and this whole net zero thing is slowing everything down. So it was just kind of, they were like, well, I don't even know if we're going to meet anymore because this thing's just going anywhere, and since everything's dissolving, so it was kind of sad. But anyways, that's sort of the update, and I'll send you each around the presentation, the Castle Blues presentation. It's kind of interesting, but that's all I have.
Okay.
Shoot.
What was the place in town? across the street from the current fire station?
I have it written down, and I unfortunately didn't bring it, but it's all on there, all the addresses that they're kind of vetting.
Right, I think it's across the street from the current DPW.
It was,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah, that makes more sense, because I'm thinking,
Yeah, what did I say?
across the street from where they are
There goes
now.
the monkey bar, right?
Oh, no, not the fire station.
Judy's?
Yeah. No, sorry, I meant to the DPW site, and then
Maybe
across the
it's
street from the DPW site.
Okay,
So it's not good.
I don't know why the committee would dissolve.
I don't, well, they meet so infrequently, and, at the end, they just didn't believe in set up another date, so, to meet, so, and they're like, well, we don't even know if we're gonna meet again, because, let's see what town meeting says, which is frustration.
If you don't have a site, that's a constraint, because no matter what you draw, you're still gonna have to make it conform to the site,
Yeah.
especially if you want to save energy. That's one thing. And the other thing is some of us, like me, said that net zero bylaw is gonna basically kill off construction, because it's unworkable. And if they don't make changes that have been suggested and painfully negotiated out, we're not gonna see another public building in Amherst for a while. Just because it's.
Well, that's understandable, but the town owns a lot of land. We have a lot of land now. How much of it is buildable, I don't know, but if you look on there, I've forgotten, at one point I looked up how much open space and land we have in this town compared to development, and it's huge. So it seems to me that you might have to mitigate some of that, but it could, I don't know. It's frustrating, I think, for the people who have to live in or work in a 100-year-old building that no one should work in. If you went through there on open house,
Oh, God.
it is awful. And people can say, well, you can fix it. You can't fix it, because if you do one thing, you trip the code, and you have to do all these other things because of code. So there's no way you can fix it, because they talked about the roof, which leaks, but if they do that, then there's something else by code they have to do, and something else on a building that's over 100 years old. And the fire station where there's fumes in there and firefighters live, they're on a 24 cycle, and they live there when they're not on call, and there's fumes in there. There's stuff in that building that isn't good either.
Right.
So somebody, somewhere has
So,
to
may I ask
get
a
on.
question about it? Because I know you have personal information about it because your son works there.
Yeah, but it's in all
But
the
no,
literature
but
too.
the thing is, if there are fumes, if it's unhealthy for people, aren't they violating some kind of a health code?
Oh, that's in the report. I didn't get this from our son. That's in these reports. This is the third report we're
No,
on.
so the question is, are they really violating health codes?
They are, I don't know about that code. I mean, they've vented the best they can. They're only 15% as well, ADA compliant, as well as the, you saw the thing on DPW. They're the two worst, 100-year-old and 90-year-old buildings.
The reason I mentioned that is because the same arguments were used about Fort River, that if there are really unhealthy conditions, then they should be violating some health codes, and they should be shut down. So the same thing with the fire station too. If they are violating health codes, then they shouldn't be in operation,
That's true.
right?
But I had read an article that quoted McPherson. He said the buildings are safe.
I don't think those ADA or the health codes come into play until you start to do renovations and stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're based on the older codes. So until you start pulling down walls and putting new nails in and stuff like that.
So why doesn't the town do one little minor change, right?
Because then they won't have
kind
any,
of-
then where are they gonna do?
Well, then you have
Where are
to-
they gonna go?
Then you end up fixing.
Tim.
Can I suggest that we just, the interesting conversation, but we need to move on,
Okay,
so
true.
make town meeting, so
Right,
let's.
but
go through the
it is,
agenda.
we're
I
just
understand that.
addressing the
Okay,
last
I
time we
understand
addressed
that. It's
the
nice to do that,
report.
but I'm just getting a little concerned.
Okay. All right, any other committee reports?
Tim, do you have something to say?
Okay, minutes of the previous meeting.
For 2 minutes.
Okay, which are the oldest?
3:29.
Mine, 329.
3:29.
Okay, is there a motion to approve Sharon's minutes of March 29th? Okay, any additional corrections or edits? Okay, all in favor of those minutes? Was everyone there?
No, I'm abstaining, I was not there.
Okay. Who is
Six.
everyone there? Do you remember you wrote them?
I
have
was
them.
there,
Everybody was there
Everyone
except me.
Jen.
except Tim.
Okay, so all the other 6 of us can vote. All in favor? Okay, 6-0, 1 abstaining. All right, Janice's minutes.
I was not present at Janice's minutes.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any other comments or edits for her minutes? Okay, then all in favor? Again, 6-0, 1 abstaining. Does that take take care of all of our minutes?
Except the ones from
Scratch
tonight.
that off.
Except, yeah, well, we can do like a 2-minute meeting before town
We
meeting
can go
to
to the
finish.
cocktail hour.
Yes, yes, we can.
It will be televised?
Okay, are we
What was your
televised?
best update?
Okay.
April 5th.
Are there any other comments before we head off to town meeting? And will we have a meeting for free cash and stabilization? Do you know?
I think it would probably, it would come up, I don't know when it's gonna come up. It's at the
Okay.
end of town meeting.
It comes up after all the budget items. So kind of keep in mind, we would have a very short meeting if we have to approve of any of that, because we'd like to wind everything up, close our books.
I would think it would have to be a straw vote right there at town meeting if it comes up.
Why?
Because we can't not vote on it if it comes up at town meeting.
Then you have, no, it just changes it, and then you have a meeting and you vote it. Usually we had like 5 minutes before the next session of town meeting to vote that.
Okay.
Because there's stuff after the money articles.
Right.
There are other articles after the money articles, so we should
But if it
have
comes
those.
up if money articles are ended in the middle of a meeting and it comes up, we have to vote it.
No, you put it off till after a meeting.
I don't remember ever putting it off.
I've never voted it during a meeting.
No, those are articles.
They're
Free
articles.
cash is an article that comes later,
Yes.
and stabilization.
We pass over it and then we meet just briefly before a meeting and that's it. Okay, anything
I have one
further? Sure.
quickie. Assuming this is our last finance committee meeting, which it could be, is that right?
Well, we might have this 5-minute meeting.
I would like to, for the minutes, move that we once again as a committee commend the town's finance department and the excellence of those folks, including our representative, during our tenure as finance committee. I think I'd like to
So
make that
moved.
part of
Second.
the minutes.
Okay.
Well, I would support that, although I think we should also acknowledge that the town has significant financial challenges there.
Understood, but, yeah.
In terms of
That these
providing the
folks have
information.
attended to quite well. Yeah, right.
Okay. All right, further comment? Then all in favor? Unanimous. Okay. All right, then,
I move we adjourn.
a second? Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, adjourn at 6:55. Oh, what is it?
6:54.
54. Thank you, Amherst Media, for covering us all of these years. We really appreciate it.